Welcome to this week's End of Days Update, coming to you from Tulsa, Oklahoma. We had such a great time this last weekend in Lexington, Kentucky, with Tony and Patsy Caminetti. The crowds were so good, meetings were so good, it's so fun. Then we went over to Danville there at Faith Church with Jay and Amy Atkins, had a great time there. And if you can, tonight we'll be in New Mexico. We got back yesterday, we'll be in Hobbs, New Mexico at Choose Life Church on Wednesday night, tonight, 7 o'clock. Come if you can. We'll have a great time. And then this weekend we start Fire for the Nations here in Tulsa at World Outreach. So excited to be at our home church. That conference is so amazing. If you're anywhere near, please come. It's a Sunday through Wednesday. What an amazing time that is, looking at the nations and focus on missions. It's just a great conference. If you can't come this year, try to mark it in your calendar to come next year because it'll be a blast. So we're coming to you every week to look at the different things that point to the coming of the Lord. And we get into it every week, but we look at things that are happening just after the rapture, because the rapture is signless, but the second coming has tons of signs. So in our book, I think it's about 79 or 80. Pretty amazing that it's so blatant. I hear people go, how can you tell when the Lord's coming back? Well, he put verse after verse after verse after verse to show us how close we are. And he said, when you see these things come to pass, lift up your heads, your redemption's drawing nigh. So he doesn't want you downtrodden. So the whole point of us getting into all the stuff about the coming of the Lord is so that you'd be expectant, you'd be happy, you'd be hopeful, and you'd be joyful. Your joy will produce great strength. And as you see the finish line, you accelerate. I've never seen a runner train, and when they see the finish line, they don't know what to do. No, they give it their all right there. So I heard a guy say, well, why would you preach on the coming of the Lord? You just get everybody's hopes up. Oh, duh, that's exactly right. So the purpose is a finish line mentality, not an escape theology, but a hustle mentality. So that's why we get into it. So the second coming has so many signs. Signs aren't there to scare people. Signs are there to let people know. It actually brings you peace. It lets you know how close you are to your destination. We're getting very, very close to the coming of the Lord, the second coming. And 7 years before that, we'll have the rapture of the church. I hear so many people kind of downing the rapture. Well, Enoch was raptured, Elijah was raptured, Jesus was raptured, and the church will be raptured. If people understood that 7 years of old covenant time that God owes Israel, and he takes the church off the earth and then repays them those 7 years and deals with them like in the old covenant. That's why it's so outward, so visual. In this dispensation, we preach the word. He confirms the word with signs following. But in the old covenant, it's bam, bam, just like Moses and Pharaoh. Snakes, sticks becoming snakes, and that's what you'll see during that 7 year period. So let's pick up what's happened. There's a lot happening right now. Probably number one is with Israel, along with the United States of America, joining in with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is saying that they'll normalize relations with Israel, which is kind of a bizarre miracle. They've been leading up to this. The only problem is our own country is trying to negotiate with Israel to give up land for peace. It's all about having literally sovereignty over Judea and Samaria. And in the deal right now, they're saying, let's don't talk about that for 4 years. Let's leave that off the table for 4 years, because that is such a big deal that Israel would give that up. No, Israel should not give that up. They won that land back in the 6-day war. It's like if people don't like the land they have, they shouldn't keep trying to kill Israel, because every time they keep trying to kill Israel, Israel gets more land. But Israel still doesn't have all of the land that the Lord promised them. So watch and see, Israel will eventually get all that. So there's so many things happening with that are kind of undercurrent, that are intriguing to me to see how they publish it and how they say it. It's just interesting how that works. And you go to the military front, you've got the defense minister, Gallant. He's already proposed and basically signed off on 4 different ways for Israel to go after Hezbollah, which is up in Lebanon. Right now, Hezbollah, however you want to call it, they're set up to attack Israel. Their leader, Nasrallah, said yesterday that Israel's a cancerous lump that has to be removed from the Middle East. And then basically said, we'll call on all of Islam. This is exactly what Turkey said too. Turkey's Erdogan said, we'll call on all of Islam and we'll ascend to the Temple Mount and take the Temple Mount from the Jews. Well, this guy from the very southern part of Lebanon, which they set up a base in the northern part of Israel, and Israel hasn't really taken it down yet. They're kind of looking at him like, are you kidding me? You think you're going to attack us again? Because the last time they had that war, Israel was way too nice, way too kind, and they said this time, if it happens, remember what I said a couple of weeks ago, Gallant said, we will bomb you back to the Stone Age. So there's threats coming from Nasrallah yesterday, talking about what he would do about the Temple Mount. So along with the Temple Mount, they're mad that the red heifers have been coming in and that Israel's ready to start having sacrifice. And it's intriguing to see this boiling to the front, coming to the front about the Temple Mount right here before the rapture of the church. That's what you're going to see the greatest war over, is going to be that piece of real estate right there. So much more involved with all of that, with all the verbiage. I love what Benjamin Netanyahu said to NBC News. He said he was defending Israel because everybody says, oh, Israel is an apartheid state. No, it's not an apartheid state just because the Palestinians don't have a military or have a police force. The problem is what's happened is you got where Israel pulled out of Lebanon, Hezbollah moved in right there. That's an Iranian proxy. So what would happen if they had their own military? You'd have Iran military right there on the edge of Israel. When Israel pulled out of Gaza, you had Hamas funnel right in. Hamas is literally a front runner for Iran. Those are all Iranian. So if you had that, you'd have Iranian soldiers right there in Gaza. So crazy things are happening. You had a Chinese biolab get found in California this last week, close to Fresno. I mean, they had thousands of vials of COVID, all kinds of crazy infectious diseases. So you've got all these groups. I used to call them they were conspiracy theories, but there's so much coming out about trying to depopulate the earth, lying about different things they would use. The Los Angeles Times said we'd rather have a power grid go out on purpose to make people conform to not using so much energy. So they're going to try to have forced blackouts just to make people think they're going to shut down and save energy. It's just crazy, the stuff that's happening right now with the transgender. You got Sweden burning the Quran right now, so Islam is getting ready to go crazy over that. And one thing after another is leading to, hey, the king's coming back. Everything that you see, as crazy as it is exactly like the days of Noah. And that's what Jesus said. Corruption and violence is what you see, and you see it maxed out to no end. Specifically the transgender, the transvestite stuff, that's being pushed on society right now to be normal. That is not normal, and I love that there's a pushback from that from our country. So many more things are happening as far as war goes. You got Israel had a ship go through Iran has a naval blockade. Russia does, to keep grain from going out from the Black Sea. I love that Israel pushed their ship right through there. So obviously America talked about sending more aircraft again and sending more might to the Middle East. So everything is building up to a pressure cooker of what's going to happen because Jesus is about to come back. It's sad that our news doesn't get so many things in America, but the Jerusalem Post this last week had quite a few wonderful articles about literally getting ready for change. And they don't even know that what's getting ready to change is the Messiah, the King, Jesus of Nazareth, just about to come back. Wow, how cool. How blessed are we to get to watch it. So every week we go to the signs. I know it's a lot of them, but man, it's amazing. I haven't talked about the Euphrates River running dry lately. ISIS was damming it up and it started running dry, but it's naturally doing that now. The Bible says the kings of the east come over that at the Battle of Armageddon. So you see that getting ready for that. But you had Israel regathered, you had Jerusalem won back, you had the Hebrew language restored, you had the Ethiopian Jews brought back in one day, you've got the fertility of the land of Israel, you got the revival of the Roman Empire, you have the Temple Mount Institute that's ready to start having sacrifices, which is amazing to have all those guys ready. Their last name is called Cohen, it means priest. The videos that you see inside that Temple Mount just give you chills because you see a picture of the upcoming temple. After that, though, you've got foxes show up on the Temple Mount. You had fish show up in the Dead Sea. You had the Dead Sea turn blood red where Sodom and Gomorrah was. Amazing. You have the ritual baths around the Temple Mount fill up with water. Pretty remarkable. 172 different species of predatory birds start showing up. God calls on the fowl of the air to clean the land up after the Ezekiel 38 war. And 7 years later, he calls on the fowl of the air to clean the land up after the Battle of Armageddon. So you have Russia and the Ukraine, Russia and Crimea. You had the Ukraine this last week fire drones into downtown Moscow. Moscow retaliated in Kyiv by hitting apartment buildings, and that's escalating even more right now. So you have all of that happening because the king's about to come back. How amazing to see the setup. So you got fish in position, birds in position, Russia in position, the Temple Mount Institute's in position. What's the church doing? The church is going, is it really the last days? How many signs do we have to have before we realize that? So there's sign after sign after sign. Men will be lovers of themselves. We have selfie sticks. Of all of them put together, it's absolutely in our face. We're about to see the King. So then you have signs. You go to signals. The Bible says that the heavens, the planets would be for signals for us. Jupiter, Regulus, and Venus came together at the birth of Jesus, the Bethlehem star. Amazing. You had blood red moons on Passover and Tabernacles. You had 4 in a row on Passover and Tabernacle. That's called a tetrad. When's the last time you had 4 in a row like that? 1967 when Jerusalem was won back, 1948 when Israel was made a nation, and 1492 at the Edict of Expulsion when the Jews were kicked out of Spain. Pretty amazing. God raised up Columbus to sail the ocean blue in 1492. What did he find? Found America. What did America end up being? A safe harbor for the Jews. So you have all these things. We don't even get to all the things about the eclipse, how last year it started in a town called Salem on the west coast, ended up in a town called Salem on the east coast. The one that's coming this fall is going to crisscross where the biggest fault line is in America, right there in the middle of Illinois. I mean, it's just... it's remarkable all the stuff that's happening. So we're blessed. What do? We help your local church, help your local pastor. We don't fit church into our life. It is our life. So the preaching on the coming of the Lord is the Lord wants you to know how close it is you're going to see Him. Why? He loves you. He's not mad at you, not frustrated with you. He loves you. Over and over again when I get into end times in every church, the Lord hammers me, tell them how much I love them. He wants to bless you. He wants to strengthen you. He wants to encourage you. There's nothing more exciting than getting born again, and there's nothing more exciting after that than knowing you're about to see the King face to face. Jesus is just about to come back. Wow. Think about it. The shepherd and the bishop of our souls, the firstborn from the dead, the lily of the valley, the resurrection and the life. Wow, the shepherd and the bishop of our souls, the King. The King's coming back. Well, come back next Wednesday. We'll see what Iran's doing. We'll see what Turkey's doing. We'll see what all these nations are doing to try to threaten Israel. It's a setup for the coming of the King. Have a blessed week. We'll see you next Wednesday.
Thanks for joining us today at the End of Days Update. If you'd like to be notified every time there's a new post, just go to the EDU at josephmorris.com and subscribe to receive email alerts. If these posts and updates have been a blessing to you, please consider making a one-time donation to help get the message out, or even becoming a monthly partner with Joseph Morris Ministries. Thanks again for tuning in to the EDU, and we'll see you next week.